Hello audience, this is Sketchy Reporter. I've never actually done this before really either. I know I usually say that a lot, but it's always fun trying new stuff. There's this guy on the internet that some of you may be familiar with. His name's Antwiler. And he does this series where he talks about, like, role-playing games and, like, other stories that he always has for his viewers and whatnot. And he calls it Counter Monkey. And before I get started on this story, I want to make sure everybody knows that I am in no way trying to steal his thunder. This is 100% my own story, but if it wasn't for him, I probably wouldn't even be a reviewer in the first place. He actually is a huge idol of mine, and without the Spoony experiment, there probably wouldn't be a Sketchy Reporter. So, I'm just shooting out there. This isn't really an ode to him, but it is kind of something in his own style, and I really think you should check if you guys are interested in my stuff, and you're gonna love the Spoony experiment. So I'll put a link over here in the description box, and that'll be that. So this is, how do I start this? I have a lot to set up and very little time. So let me just start off by kind of throwing in there what my opinion of role-playing is. When it comes to role-playing, I almost guarantee you everybody out there has done this in some way, shape, or form. Whether it be you're idolizing somebody, you want to live a life that isn't yours, you want to live a more exciting life, and it's just this world that you create inside your head. That, in my opinion, is role-playing, and I guarantee you all of you guys have done that. If you guys are writing a story, that's role-playing. If you guys are writing a script, that's role-playing. If you guys have this imagination that takes you to wondrous heights to be somebody that you're not, that is role-playing. And I'm going to tell you guys a story about whenever I was about 7 or 8, probably 8 or 9 actually, years old. And this is the story of the purple crystal. Yeah. Oh boy. I was kind of cleaning out my basement, and I ran across these. I do not know if you out there know what this series is. This is called the, well, this one's not actually, it's the same author, but this is called the Artemis Fowl series. Artemis Fowl, for me, was a huge part of my childhood. It was one of the perfect ways to combine fantasy and sci-fi together. This book had everything like that. It had sci-fi, it had fantasy, it had technology, it had imagination. Ewan Colfer, I'm not really sure if I'm pronouncing the name right, but amazing author. If you have not checked out Artemis Fowl, I highly recommend it. I've only read the first 4 and the graphic novel. If there is like a 5 and further on, please let me know, because I would really like to reread these and read ahead if possible, because I remember reading these so much and just loving it. I love the character. It was like a character that I wanted to be growing up. You know, that was my idea of role-playing. Just to imagine yourself as another character living a fantasy-like life. And sure, it might sound crazy. I had dreams like that. I wrote stories like that. That just a world that I wanted to live in, basically very similar to this. And so, me and my friends, I will use their real names, because this isn't really an embarrassing story, I don't think. But we had this game that we almost played every summer. Or we did play almost every summer. And it was called Cross-Dimensional, what was it? It was like Cross-Dimensional Adventures, I think is what we called it. And it was like we took a character from any movie, any book in the world, and we were that character. And someone else chose a character completely different, and you guys had some sort of wild adventure together. You had the combination of just meeting these really awkward characters in this new world, and you just saw what happened. It was a what-if scenario. And it was so much fun to act this out as kids. We were like 8 or 9 years old. Our imaginations were wild. Completely insane. So, we had ideas like, I'm trying to think of a good example. It was like Gandalf meets Ash from Pokemon. You know, it was insane, the mixtures we came up with. It was like Robin Hood meets Dracula. I don't know. Just completely out there scenarios, and you think of it, you think of anything, and we would have tried it. But I always seem to go back to wanting to be Artemis Fowl, which is why I saw these books on my shelf, and my mind just rushed back to this story. Because I was so young, yet this adventure stays so fresh in my mind. And that's kind of a lot of setup, I know. But I always wanted to be Artemis Fowl is what I'm basically trying to get to. And my friend, Michael, always wanted to be this wizard named Rune. It was from some sort of video game as far as I remember. It was basically kind of like if you were to take Avatar: The Last Airbender and ramp it up. Like, this wizard could create fire, he could create ice, he could create earthquakes, he could create lightning. He was a character that, you know, was overpowered. No one wanted to face him in combat. It was so much... He had so much power, and no one would ever want to stand in his way. I, of course, wanted to be kind of the minor character. I wanted him to be a character that was defeatable, but whimsical and very intelligent, which Artemis fell. So I kind of wanted to aspire to be like a billionaire miniature Bruce Wayne, you know? Basically what Artemis Fowl is just like a miniature Bruce Wayne that creates all these crazy inventions to capture these like fantasy characters in this sci-fi like spaceship environment. Artemis Fowl is awesome. But I wanted to... We kind of took this scenario. We took Artemis Fowl and we took Rune. I think it's his only name, just Rune. And they met. And it was, you know, it was just... They met, they kind of exchanged their ideas, they exchanged names. I don't think we actually entered a combat, but we did show off our talents when it came to experimentation, and when it came to, like, magic, and it came to building stuff. We you know, talked about it in our character. So, being 8 and 9 years old, our imagination is just exploded with ideas. And so my friend, Michael, brings up the idea that he has this geo. And if you're not really familiar with what a geo is, it's basically a rock that inside has all these tiny little like crystals in it. And he spray painted it purple. He made this purple Geodude, that's Pokemon, isn't it? He created this Geo, and it was really, really cool looking. I wish I still had that rock, actually. It was amazing looking in purple and glittery, and it was awesome. And this rock is the whole reason behind this neighborhood war. And I'll get into that in a second. Me and one of my best friends named Jennifer, we had this huge little, like, club that we called TOSP, which was slightly inspired by the Calvin and Hobbes comic books, you know, the, gross, like, what is it? I'm trying to remember what it was. Girls is something really gross. I forget what it was. But, it was basically lightly based off Calvin and Hobbes, and we called it TOSP, which stood for Teens of Super Summer Fun. And it's really sad that this war started over a rock and a really cheesy idea for a clubhouse. But we did it, and it was me and Jennifer in one side, and then Michael had his team. I don't think he had a club, but he just had this fortress that he had created inside his mind in his backyard. And so my innocent little clubhouse got invaded, practically, by Michael's team. So he comes over, he starts, you know, trying to confront us, trying to start a war in this neighborhood. Super soakers, lightsaber, like plastic lightsabers, plastic baseball bats. It was on. And so I, of course, am trying to be the hero of this whole ordeal, and I'm trying to back him off, trying to keep him out of the clubhouse, and he accidentally slips. He slips and he falls out of my clubhouse onto his back, and I jump down after him thinking he's trying to get away. And I slip as well, and I hurt myself, and I go into my house crying. I was 8. And so I look out the window while I'm crying to my mother, and I see that he has the purple rock. And he's kind of showing it off to all my friends, all of his friends. And he runs away with this rock. I get this evil idea to steal said rock. in my fit of rage that he caused pain to myself. I caused pain to myself. So, I hatch a plan. I get Jennifer and I get one of my other friends, I can't remember who it was at the right now, but I get super soakers and I get water balloons and I rush over to his house, armed and ready, and while he's eating lunch, I steal the rock and take it back to my house. He finds out. He gets his little army together of about 2 or 3 friends. He comes over. We kind of have a super soaker fight to the death. You know, it was classic role-playing roles. You get shot in the head, you're dead. You are gone from the game. Shot in the arm, you can't use the arm until you get healed. Like, shooting the leg, you have to like hobble until you get healed. Shot in like the chest, you're basically paralyzed. It was a mess. Super soakers were going everywhere. People were actually getting pretty badly bruised with the plastic bats. And he eventually got the upper hand. We all kind of ran away, and he got the rock back and went back to his house. Of course, my plan failed. I didn't stop there. I went back to his house as Artemis Fowl and confronted him in character, saying, I understand that this rock here is the essence of the neighborhood, and anybody who has this rock has complete power over all the neighborhood kids. So, of course, he fights me for it. I have a baseball bat in my hand, he has a baseball bat in his hand, and we are clanging back and forth with these baseball bats. It's making like really loud sounds. I think we actually broke one of the bats, and I think I broke my bat. I actually retreated. So the rock is just at his house, and the fun thing about this was that there were no rules at all in this entire fight. Everything had just gone haywire from an innocent role-playing game now to a full-fledged war. And I'm not talking like this was a playful war. He was genuinely mad at me for stealing this purple rock. So, the funny thing about this was there were no rules, but there were boundaries. None of our parents wanted this rock in the house. Why? It was dirty, the paint was falling off of it and flicking all over the place, and no one wanted to clean it up. So this rock had to stay on the front porch if no one was guarding it. Which made it really easy for capturing, but also really easy to know when it was stolen. So, what do? I find another geode, and I spray paint it purple as well, and I leave it on his porch and run away with the original. Thinking I was extremely clever, I hid it, like under a bush in my front yard. And he still thinks he has the correct geo. He thinks this for a couple days, thinking that I've given up, and I'm just kind of like relaxing in my clubhouse, just like, yep, I surrender, the rock's all yours. So, he finally, me and him start to become friends, you know, we are just kind of hanging out, and he sees the original hidden behind the bush one day. Oh boy. The look on his face when he saw that I still had the original rock. I'll never forget that. He was so mad. So he takes the rock again, fending me off with I think it was like a toy shovel or something. Remember, we're like 8 or 9 years old, and this is around the time that the Star Wars Phantom Menace had come out. So we all have our plastic lightsabers. We're all dueling in the front yard in kind of a playful fashion, but in honesty, we kind of wanted to kill each other. So he has the rock. He takes it back to his house again, and he hides it in his fortress, which is kind of surrounded by thorn bushes, and it's slightly actually really intimidating. So he has the original rock again. The fake one's demolished. So I hatch a new plan. I get my friends together. We're gonna flank them. I have my friends go around the other side of his house. I creep up through the bushes in any attempt to distract him while my friends grab the rock. Any attempt to distract him. So I get in close enough, and right when I'm about to grab it, he sees me. And he smacks my hand with a stick. Oh, it hurt. He smacks my hand with, it's not really a dowel rod, but it's like a garden stake. So there's another story behind that as well, but I'll get into that one some other day. But he smacks my hand with this garden stake. I get one too, and we start fighting with these garden stakes. This is no longer a game. The game is long gone. We are basically fighting until one of us bleeds. It was that brutal. And this rock was so important to both of us. Our imaginations had gotten so insane that this rock was the very essence of survival. Like, this rock was like an idol in this neighborhood. The entire neighborhood was starting to get kind of worried about us, because we were these two crazy kids just fighting and, like, honestly almost spilling blood over this, rock. My friends eventually just kind of started parting ways, like Tyler and Michael, you guys are getting really insane, this needs to stop, and we couldn't. Our imaginations had just gotten so out of hand. And so we fought, like, the entire summer, back and forth, this rock getting passed back and forth, day and night, just trying to see who can get the upper hand finally in this stupidity of a war. So one day, I kind of dropped the bomb. And I'm not proud of us, and I'm a terrible, 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 terrible person for doing so, but I finally snuck over at night and stole the purple rock. While I believe he was asleep at this point, and took it back to my house, and I spray painted it red. I spray painted the genuine purple rock red. Now, there were no rules, there were sides, but no one really cared at this point. I basically demolished the main thing this war was entirely over. So I have now, the purple rock is now red. He finds out about this, and again, we were no longer fighting with sticks. We were no longer fighting with toys. He punched me. He punched me square in the jaw. And we actually scruffled on the floor, punching, kicking, like whatever we could do to injure the other one in the middle of his backyard. It was over a rock. So, eventually, you know, this is the point where he was kind of crying, I was crying, I went home, he went home, and we basically just didn't speak. We just kind of parted ways, and I had my life, he had his. We'd look at each other in the hallways at school and just give like the evilest scowl to one another, and it was, and we kind of just hated each other. We were mortal enemies for probably 2 or 3 years. We couldn't stand to look at each other, and it was over a rock. And the reason I'm laughing so hard about this is I just saw this guy a couple of days ago, actually. And me and him are actually, you know, we're not the closest of friends, but we still talk. He's still a great person to talk to. I mean, I kind of mentioned him a couple months ago, and I was like, "Do you remember Purple Rock?" And he's like, "Don't get me started, man. Don't get me started on that Purple Rock. The Purple Rock almost tore apart the whole neighborhood. The universe was in jeopardy because of that rock." And in a crazy mixed-up way, it kind of was. I could have lost a decent friend, and I'm really glad that, you know, I didn't. It's just, I guess the moral of this lesson is, role-playing is perfectly fine. Role-playing is so much fun. But it's so easy, yet kind of funny to watch how far people will go with it. And how an innocent little game of cross-dimensional adventures, where I play a fictional character, he plays a fictional character, my friends all play fictional characters, and we finally unite. In a real world, in a real war, where tears, blood, violence, it's all real. It all ensues. Imagination just takes hold, and you are literally in a real war for survival. Just whenever you guys do it in real life, don't make it over a rock. It was a rock. But you know what? I wouldn't trade the experience for the world. I don't know if this story, you know, people might have tuned out by now. I don't know how long this has been going on for. But you know what? I wouldn't change it for the world. It's part of, I'm a nerd. What is the Sketchy Reporter? The Sketchy Reporter is a YouTube channel that I want to be able to talk freely about nerdy stuff like games and movies and cards, and if all possible, role-playing stories. Because you know what? There's a lot of them out there. There's a lot of role-playing stories out there that are worth telling, and I almost know for a fact that a lot of my viewers out there have similar stories. If not similar stories, then a role-playing story where you might have imagined yourself in another world and things just got completely out of hand. And I would like to hear those stories. And if you'd like to comment in the inbox or like mail me a letter in my Yahoo Messenger or my YouTube account, please feel free to do so. And it's just kind of fun to talk about. I might mention it. It's fun. It's fun to use your imagination and to create a character that you normally would not be. And it's just amazing to see how far role-playing can unravel at the same time. It's so insane, but like I said, I wouldn't trade the experience for the world, because it was kind of a learning experience. And it was a lot of fun to see my friends be tactical and be strategic over something that meant a lot in the long run. It was the key to the neighborhood. And whenever I jeopardized it by painting a different color, the game's just kind of over. There was no good versus evil. There was no, there was no good versus evil. There was no heroes. There was no villains. Basically, every single one of us was a thief. That's all it was. We were all thieves. And it's not a good game to look back upon, really, but role-playing's fun. So, I hope that you guys enjoyed the story, and a part of me really misses it. This is Sketchy Reporter, signing off.